Hello everybody and welcome to this BGA webinar, which is based on the BGA continuous impact model. I hope everyone has joined okay and they can hear me and see my screen and my presentation. I have called this presentation Demystifying the CIM, the Continuous Impact Model, because I understand there's quite a lot of confusion and apprehension about this particular part of the BGA accreditation process. But hopefully by the end of this session, you will have a much clearer understanding of what it is, and you will have a better understanding of the fact that it is actually quite a straightforward concept and one that shouldn't be confusing. It should be one that is challenging, absolutely, and any continuous improvement process should be challenging. So I will not deny it's not something that will take time and effort to work with, but it should be a concept that is actually at its heart very simple and also, more importantly, extremely useful to you, your institution, and your stakeholders as well, in terms of proving the impact that you have across a whole range of different ideas and metrics. So welcome everyone, I am Mark Stoddard. I am the Director of BGA Services, so I have complete oversight of the suite of BGA products and services, including the accreditation process. I'm also the Director of Accreditation for AMBER. Also delighted to be joined on this session by Professor Philip McLaughlin. He can, I'm sure, introduce himself when he speaks to you, but I would just like to say that he is one of AMBER's most experienced assessors. He is BGA's most experienced mentor. He also sits on AMBER's International Accreditation Advisory Board and BGA's Accreditation Board, and was also an important consultant in formulating BGA and bringing it to you. So I'm sure his insights will be incredibly valuable. So I thought I would start by giving a bit of an overview of BGA and what it is and what it's trying to achieve. I know some of you here are in the BGA accreditation process, so hopefully you have a good understanding of this already, but I know also some of you are new to BGA, and so I thought this would be a good way to set the scene. So BGA is AMBER's sister brand. It was launched just over 2 years ago. AMBER, as you may know, is over 50 years old now. And BGA was actually the original name of AMBER when it was formed back in 1967. So it is a name and a brand that has a lot of heritage, but it is, in its current incarnation, is reasonably new. And its vision is to be the global movement for responsible management, positive impact, and lifelong learning. It is a whole school membership and accreditation scheme, so it's not focused on particular programs, very different from AMBER, for example, which has specific focus on the MBA. And BGA is based on 3 core pillars, and these are expanded into the 9 points of what we call the BGA Charter. So the pillars in the charter are really the rules of engagement for BGA. If you wish to work with BGA, you at the very basic level have to sign up and say that you agree to the pillars in the BGA Charter, and you will work towards helping to achieve those. So these are the 3 pillars of the BGA Charter: responsible management, positive impact, and lifelong learning. Now here in this workshop on the CIM, the continuous impact model, obviously the middle one of those, positive impact, is the key focus. But as we go through this session, I hope you will understand how it also impacts on responsible management and lifelong learning. So the 3 really work together, even though the continuous impact model, by its very name and nature, is more focused on the impact element of the 3. This is the size of the current BGA network. So with just over 2 years, we have 161 institutional members of BGA. 5 schools have achieved validation. This is an optional interim stage between membership and accreditation that schools can choose to go for. It's a desktop-based quality assurance mechanism, and 14 schools have gone through the accreditation process successfully. Okay, so on to the key topic for today. What is the continuous impact model? Well, it is the cornerstone of the whole accreditation process. It's not the only part of the accreditation process. Those of you who have looked at the accreditation information on our website or spoken to myself or one of my colleagues, you will understand that there is a much wider set of documentation, information, criteria to meet in terms of achieving BGA accreditation. But the CIM is really the cornerstone of that. And so I said earlier that I would try to make sure that you understand that the CIM is actually quite a straightforward concept. And so really I'd like to position it in 2 ways here, and each of those 2 ways has 2 parts or 2 elements to it. So the first part of that is measuring your institution's impact at a particular point in time. So the first part of that is, what impact do you as an institution want to make? And that really is in defining the impact metrics that you're going to use. And then you show how you've measured that impact at a particular point of time. So this is our impact in those areas as of today. And that in itself, I think, is an extremely useful thing to have put together to actually prove that you are meeting your mission, that you are having a positive impact on your ecosystem, on your stakeholders, and you can use that in marketing your institution and showing that you're actually doing what you say you are trying to achieve. But the second part to the continuous impact model is using it as a continuous improvement tool. And so the 2 parts to that are, 1, how has this impact changed over time? So you need to measure it over a period of time and show what changes have been made in that impact metric over a period of time. And perhaps most importantly, what have you as an institution learned during that process and learned from that measurement over time? Have things got better? Have things stayed the same? Have things got worse? Why? What can you do about it? What have you done about it? And these are really the sort of key questions that we really want the continuous impact model to reveal to you, and for you to answer to the assessment team when they come to the accreditation process, to make sure that you use this as a continuous improvement tool to keep improving, making sure your impact continues to improve over time. So this is the continuous impact model in diagrammatic form. It has 6 main components to it, and you can see those there on your screen. I will just talk very briefly about these 6 elements and perhaps give you, I think, probably very simplistic examples of what they mean and sorts of things that you could consider to look at. But these very much are just examples, and I hope you don't take these as being necessarily the things that we are looking for. So intent, this really is about defining something that is specifically related to the mission, to the vision, or to the strategy of your school. So it's likely to be something that is very specific to you, to your institution. It's probably something that you would consider to be a point of differentiation for you. So for example, if your mission was to be a world leader in combining technology and management, you would need to develop an impact metric around showing how you are trying to achieve that, how you're going to combine technology and management, and how you're going to show that that is actually something you are achieving and it is something that you are looking to improve over time. The next one I'll talk about is graduate achievement. So this is really related to the impact that your graduates have when they have got your degree, your qualification, your training, and they go out into the market, and what are they achieving? What are they using that education to achieve? So a very simplistic example of that might be salary rise post-graduation, and there are obviously a variety of industry standards for that. For example, how does your graduate salary increased 6 months after graduation? That's quite a traditional, simplistic example, but hopefully that demonstrates the sorts of things that we are looking for in that element. Next, I'll talk about scholarship. So this is, while graduate achievement is about the output from your graduates, this really is about outputs from your staff, from your school. So usually would be from your faculty. Again, there are some quite industry standard conventions around things you could look at to demonstrate your impact in scholarship. We would urge you to look beyond those and not just consider those as the only opportunities that you could use to develop your impact. But one of them might be, for example, a very traditional one, the number of articles published in international journals, be that academic or practitioner. Next, I'll look at value creation. So here we will be looking at how you are creating new value for your stakeholders. So something that would not exist without your business school being there. So again, another simplistic example might be the number of successful startups that your business school has incubated. So these are organizations that would not have existed without you, without your support in helping your students create their own companies. If I turn now to ecosystem, so here we're looking at the direct impact on the ecosystem that the school operates in. So for example, this might be the number of jobs that your institution creates for the local economy. How many staff do you employ that come from within your ecosystem, and how does that have a positive impact on that ecosystem? And then finally, last but definitely not least, society. And this would be looking at activity that positively impacts society more widely than any of the others probably would have considered. So, for example, this might be support for social entrepreneurship projects. It might be the ways in which you're looking to alleviate poverty worldwide. Quite a grand one, perhaps that one, but also very laudable, and one I think we would, as BGA, very much support. So how are you looking to impact positively on society more generally, perhaps rather than beyond just your ecosystem, beyond just your students, beyond just your faculty, for examples? Okay, so with that in mind, what sort of CIM metrics are we looking for, and how would you look to define these? So I think the first and most important element initially is that they must be measurable. You cannot demonstrate impact, particularly over time, and show how this is changing over time without having metrics that are actually measurable. So you need to make sure that however you define your impact metrics, it is something that can be measured and measured over time. They should be related to the mission, the vision, and the strategy of the school. Or perhaps put another way, they should not be polar opposites to what you're stating in your mission. So an example to illustrate that might be if your mission is all about entrepreneurship and you want to be encouraging entrepreneurship amongst all your stakeholders, it would not make sense to have a CIM metric related to increasing the number of engagements you have with multinational corporations, for example. So what you set should really be related to who you are and what you are trying to achieve. So we would like you to develop CIM metrics for all 6 of those categories, but we would accept a minimum of 5 of the 6. I think you will probably see from the way in which I've illustrated some of those in the earlier slide, that really some of them, there's quite a lot of crossover between them. So I think if you were to cover 5 of those, that would probably be acceptable. And we would like you to have 2 metrics under each of those categories, a minimum of 2 under each of those categories. And we would also ask that one of these 2 is directly connected, directly related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the key things about BGA, as you've seen earlier, one of the 3 pillars being responsible management, and we are actively supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we do think it's important that your metrics can relate to those. And we would also encourage you to look beyond the sort of more educational aspects of those Sustainable Development Goals and work with some of the more environmental ones as well. So this slide and the next one is looking at some of the examples of how you might wish to display your metrics. It's not a requirement to do it in this way. This is a suggestion. This is a way to think about it, to try and conceptualize it. All this information and the following example are in the documentation that we have on our website on the CIM. So we would strongly urge you to look at that. I'm not going to go into this in the example in too much detail. There is much more information available in the document on our website. So please do take a look at that, read that, and use that to try and better understand the continuous impact model. So one of the ways of looking at conceptualizing the CIM could be to look at in terms of impact, activity, output, outcome, and then impact. So under this particular template, input would be the resources that you have allocated to achieving the desired target, to achieving the overall impact that you want to achieve. Activity would be the actions that you've taken with this input, with these resources. Output would be the direct tangible results from this activity. Outcome would be the changes made as a result of this. And then your overall impact will be the outcomes as a direct result of the input and activity. So this here is an example, again, quite a simplistic one. Again, it's in the documentation available on our website, but you can see there we've illustrated the dimension, we've illustrated the periods of time over which the impact is being measured, and over those 3 particular years in this example, there are 3 elements of input, of activity, of output, outcome, and overall impact. Excuse me. So as I say, this is just one example, quite a simplistic one. We certainly wouldn't want you to take this as an exemplar necessarily of what to do and how to do it, but this is just one illustration of how you could look to represent your impact in your continuous impact model. Okay, so having thought about your continuous impact model, how does this fit into the overall accreditation process? So the continuous impact model comes into effect once you've been accepted into the accreditation process. So once you've been accepted into the accreditation process, really your first job is to start to think about what your initial metrics might be. So once you've entered the accreditation process, you will be allocated an academic mentor from within the BGA list of approved mentors. Obviously, we would work with you to obtain the right mentor, so you would have an active say in that process. And once you've thought about what your initial metrics might be, you would then work on refining these with your mentor. So part of your mentor's role is to make sure that these are the right metrics, that they are measurable, that they are related to your mission, and then will help you, or support you, I should say, in developing these over time. So once you have developed these metrics, you then need to measure them once, your impact as of now, and then measure them over time. And this is why we say that the accreditation process is usually a minimum of 2 years, because that's the time it would take to measure your impact over a variety of different stages. So when you think you have something that is ready in terms of your CIM. You have measured your impact over time, and you can demonstrate what you have learned from that process. You need to get your mentor's approval to move to the next stage. The mentor will write a short report demonstrating that they believe that the CIM is complete and they believe that the school is ready for the accreditation visit. That report and your CIM as it stands then goes to the BGA Accreditation Board for their approval to continue. If you get the green light to go ahead, you will then continue to refine the metrics as you go forward, depending on what sort of timescale you're looking at for your accreditation visit. And it's important to note that the CIM will, it doesn't end there, the CIM will be an integral part of the accreditation visit discussions. Obviously, the accreditation visit does not look solely at the CIM. We are looking at all the accreditation criteria. And again, these are fully available on our website for those of you that are not familiar with them. But the CIM will be an integral part of those discussions during an accreditation visit. So you'd be prepared to demonstrate what you have learned as a result of your continuous impact model and the continuous impact model process. Okay, so here is some further advice from my perspective when you are thinking about putting the CIM together. You could certainly use qualitative or quantitative ways to measure your impact and to demonstrate your impact. And we would encourage you to think about innovative ways of doing that. I think, for most of us, the quantitative probably comes easier because it's obviously it's easier to measure things, or it seems to be easier to measure things with numbers. But we would encourage you to think beyond that. We would certainly accept anything that is relevant and would work as a measurement that it is qualitative. So have a think about what sort of innovative ways you could use to measure your impact. It's very important that the CIM is not prescriptive. So although we've got those 6 areas that we'd like you to look at developing your metrics in, really there's nothing else prescriptive about the CIM. So excuse me, please do not think about us forcing you into particular ways of measuring things, about measuring particular things. Really use it as a way to show what impact you want to achieve, what impact you want to demonstrate, and how you want to demonstrate it. It's very important that the metrics that you develop are suitably challenging, and this is one of the roles of the mentor, really, is to make sure they are suitably challenging. It should be something that challenges you as an institution to achieve. Otherwise, you're not going to get the continuous improvement that the accreditation process is all about. So, as I said, the mentor will work to help you do this. But for example, if you're looking at an entrepreneurship type element, saying we're going to move from 1 startup company this year to 2 startup companies the next year, is probably not sufficiently challenging. So think about the ways in which you can make sure that you are pushing yourselves, and your mentor will help to do that for you. Keep it succinct as much as possible. The example that I gave earlier, sort of that tabular format, I think is quite useful because it helps you think about, perhaps bullet points, simple descriptions, rather than reams and reams of text. Not only do you have this CIM, but also you have the self-audit report as part of the BGA accreditation process. This is the document that covers all the accreditation criteria, and that really is the narrative of your school. So if you want to develop a more full narrative of your continuous impact model, save it for the SAR. Keep the continuous impact model itself as succinct as possible, short and sharp, so that it shows the metrics, it shows the changes over time, and it shows the key elements of learning from those measurements. I think this next one is really, really important. Use your faculty expertise. You've got staff within your organization, they should be able to help you in developing the metrics. So for example, if you have research methods professors, they will be a great source of information and very valuable in terms of helping to define measurable impact metrics. So use your faculty as a sort of side anecdote. It's often the case, well, not necessarily often, but it does happen quite often when we go to an accreditation and a business school has, for example, a world-class strategy professor, and yet the business school itself has either a very poor strategy or a non-existent strategy. So obviously, that faculty expertise is not being leveraged there. So make sure you utilize your faculty expertise to help you develop the best possible continuous impact model. Use your mentor appropriately. The mentors that we work with are really, really keen on supporting the development of management education worldwide. So they are very keen to help you achieve your goals, one of which is accreditation. So they will be there to help you. They are not there, as I'm sure hopefully goes without saying, they are not there to write metrics for you. They are not there to help you measure the metrics, but they are there as a sounding board, as an advisor. And also make sure that you're using them not just for the CIM, that you are using them for any other elements that you might need support with on your accreditation journey. As I mentioned a couple of times already, there's a whole other areas of things you need to look at in the accreditation process, not just the CIM, and your mentor will support you in those areas as well. So make sure you're using them with those goals in mind as well, while obviously understanding the limits that they will not write documents for you, and obviously that they have other jobs to do as well, and so cannot dedicate all of their time to supporting you. And finally, and I put this in italics because I think it's really important, that as a continuous improvement model that the CIM is, you must show learning and development from this CIM. And so don't be too concerned if, for example, one or two of your metrics do not show an improvement in impact. Maybe one or two might show a decline in impact in that particular metric. The important point is not necessarily about the actual overall numbers, but it's about showing what you've learned from the process. So if your particular impact metrics are showing a downward trend, obviously not ideal, but what are you doing about it? What have you learned about your institution? What can you do differently? What are you doing differently to make sure that your impact actually improves and that you are serving your stakeholders and the world at large as best as you possibly can? So that really is, for me, the most important part of the continuous impact model, that you use it not just as something to achieve an accreditation and something that BGA are telling you to do, but that it actually becomes an important part of your continuous improvement journey, and it becomes an important part of your own development as an institution serving the world. So just a brief note here about further resources. I've talked about the CIM overview document with those examples in it. That's downloadable from our website. There is a whole range of other information on the website about the continuous impact model, as well as the entire accreditation process. So please do go there and read all that first. It really will help you, I'm sure. And then my contact details are there. Please do let me know at any time if I can help answer any questions that you may have. So with that in mind and with that covered, I'm going to pass you to Professor Philip McLaughlin, who will give you some of his initial thoughts as a mentor for schools going through the BGA accreditation process. And then, of course, we will take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Yes, you can't tell me, but I hope you can. Yes, Marcus. Many thanks, Mark, for that very clear and succinct presentation. It's always very difficult to follow somebody because I'm wondering what I can possibly say, but I do have a few things I'd like to say. First of all, there is one person in the room who has asked for your transparencies, your slides, Mark, so I'm sure you'll give them a Christmas present and send them to them. Well, it really is a pleasure for me to have a chat with you. As Mark pointed out, I've done an awful lot of accreditations and mentorship visits. And I think the pleasure is because every single school has its own culture and its own distinctiveness. And you cannot go into a school with any preordained recipes. So every time I go in, it's a fabulous learning experience for me. I think the first thing that I would say is a good CIM, a good mentorship mission involves the whole school. Sometimes you go into a school and it's been the idea of the dean, and the dean hasn't really talked about it with the project people, and you're suddenly in the room with the project person because there's always some unfortunate person who's been appointed to look after the scene, and that poor person really doesn't have much of an idea of what to do, and the dean is very busy. So I think the first point I would say is that you've got to make sure, if you are the project leader, that you have sufficient contact and support. And support is not just moral, it's also that the person is consultable where you can test your ideas. Apart from that, what I'd like to say is that, and Mark was quite true, it is straightforward to see. It is challenging though. And why is it challenging? Well, probably because of the questions that Mark himself asked during his presentation. You know, he said, what is the impact you want to make? How are you going to do it? He also talked about it being linked to the mission, to the vision, and to strategy. So you can see that although we may talk about the CIM, the continuous impact model, and some of the mentor's role is effectively to help you define your metrics, really from the outset, it's a strategy consultation process. And whenever I go into a school, the first thing I ask for is, will you allow me to review your material? Can I look at your strategic plans? Can I look at any accreditations that you've been given either via the national authorities, and I can read Spanish, Portuguese and the like, or by international accreditation agencies? Because it really is, the CIM, the continuous impact model, is a window into your school. It's a window, and that's why it's very important. It's holistic. And I think that is really a very, very important thing to stress. It's an integral part of your process, and you need not only to bring in your faculty, but also staff. In a sense, let's retake what Mark said. It's the narrative of the school. It is. And in fact, the continuous impact model is, in England, we have this game called Snakes and Ladders, where you've got a ladder, that's the narrative, and the continuous impact model is the snake that goes around it. Children love playing that game. And the continuous impact model brings it all together. So what would I have to tell you at this stage, given the fact that the factual explanations have been really, very, very clear? I think some of the issues that strike me very early on are, first of all, problems about defining the unit. Who will be responsible for the continuous impact model? Is it the university? Is it the faculty? Some schools suggest, oh, we just want this center to be the subject of our accreditation. So that is something that's very important, defining the unit. Also, this is clearly questions of territory. Who has the power? Who can negotiate? So my first piece of advice would be, if you're going through it, make sure everyone agrees that it is the Faculty of Economics and Management, or it is the business school, or whatever institution, whatever unit you've decided to use. The second problem that I see when I go in is many schools don't have a strategy, or the strategy is more a wish list. Oh, so we want to do this, we want to do that. And so they're quite surprised to hear me say, well, do you have any, sorry for the sort of consultancy jargon, a key KPI, but measurable objectives over time with a sequenced action plan, with a calendar. I was last week looking at an accreditation for a school, And that was one of the major issues. They had a wonderful strategic plan, which is about 20 pages, but it was really just a wish list. It was, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do that, but there were no measurable objectives, there was no strategic cycle. So before you think about the continuous impact model, try and ensure that you've started some type of discussion about strategy. The other issue that I would that causes problems, we've talked about territory defined at the unit. The other issue is the limited stakeholder input. If you read the BGA criteria, there really is an insistence on having a very broad process for consulting your stakeholders. And many schools, they will consult corporates, but the consultation is not always that good. They may consult their alumni. Often they neglect their students. They'll consult their students on issues of, are the courses good, but not necessarily on where do you think we should be going. There's this sort of relative reticence to share strategic issues with students. And I think in many schools, I'm surprised to see, and we get this in the questionnaires, because we send out questionnaires, faculty often feel that they are disenfranchised, that they are not empowered. So again, that would be an issue for me. Ensure that you've done your best to have a broad consultative process, and these people can help you define your continuous impact model. Obviously, you have to vary it, you have to respect secrets and things, but by and large, there's generally a tendency to under-consult rather than to over-consult. Another issue which, for me, hinders organizational learning, hinders continuous improvement. You go into some schools and I say to them, kind of look at the minutes of your meetings. And when you look at the minutes of the meetings, supposedly the big significant ones, advisory committees, MBA, program development committee, you often find that some of these committees are very operational. There's very little debate. So if I had another piece of advice, it would be when you have a meeting, have minutes and record the discussions, the for and the against. It helps you and it helps external auditors to know what you're doing. Another issue which comes up regularly is many schools, when they're looking at the ecosystem or impact on their environment, often they'll be thinking in terms of international, because everyone wants to be international, and they neglect their own university, their own ecosystem. A number of schools where I've gone to, they've got excellent business schools, really superb business schools. And those business schools are desperately trying, and with success, trying to establish partnerships across the world in collaborative research projects. For example, Mark talked about technology and management. And I say to them, well, you have a faculty of engineering here. Do you work with them? Oh, no. So, think a little bit about your own ecosystem. If you're going to go out to the world, it's quite nice to go out to the world having tested your ideas internally. Then I would say, again, I talked about holistically. As I said, it is a window into how your distinctiveness. And I would urge you to really define. It would help your mentor enormously, and it would help you if you actually sat down, either at executive committee level or as a working group, and you actually drafted a document. What do you understand by sustainability? What do you understand by sustainability within your market, within your zone of influence? What do your corporates understand by sustainability? What do your students understand by sustainability? And I think you should do that similarly with responsible management. So, for me, that would be the three key issues that Mark talked about, the responsible management, positive impact, sustainability. These, I would encourage you to draft a document, 2 or 3 pages, just so you have an idea of what you're trying to do. Often the continuous impact model, it will give criteria and it will give objectives, and we often don't see anything in the continuous. I would prefer to see some things about the curriculum. For example, in the continuous impact model, you could use it for continuous development by having your faculty upgrade and include it in their courses. Many schools will say to me, oh, we're committed to responsible management. And they are. They have projects, social projects, they have ethics classes, they have classes in corporate social responsibility, they have classes on developmental economics, ecological marketing, fine, one-off. But, you know, I say to them, well, I've went through all of your syllabi, and it wasn't clear how all of your faculty bring these into their syllabi. So that would be a piece of advice. Make sure your faculty, you know, organize a seminar for your faculty. Tell them, talk to them about responsible management. Talk to them about what they understand by an impact of their research. And then you can actually start looking at your syllabi to make sure they're modernized. You can also look at your learning objectives. Are they appropriate? Are they respecting what you're saying in your continuous impact model? And then I think the other question would be, you yourselves, often we talk about responsible management and ethics. Some schools have nicely integrated this. Are you ethical as an institution in your handling of corporate relationships? Do you show responsible management in the way you handle handicapped students, ethnic minorities, students? Again, try and show it not just in the courses, but you are actually how you do it in organizing your activities. And I think that probably at this stage, that's the only thing I could say at this stage, because every mentoring position is different. But the continuous impact model is not a problem. It really isn't. Most people, I mean, it is at first. They go and say, oh, well, what does it mean? I always say to them, well, you go away and test me. But after a while, it isn't an issue. People can define outcomes and the impact. The outcome is the desired, is what happens, what physically happens. And the impact, for example, the quotation that Mark gave, if you look, there was a whole series of initiatives that led to this school being awarded the Amber Award for Best Project. That is the outcome. But the impact was, in fact, that enabled them to have the credibility to establish themselves within a business school network. So that's the difference, I would think. You know, the impact of the measurable, of the results, long-term results of the outcome. You know, you might think, oh, well, we're trying to, one of our objectives will be to reduce student failure. And you might sort of decide, well, we will better explain how our assessment system works. And you might find that student failure has decreased. But in actual fact, that may not be the metric that will enable you to prove that. You know, you need to make sure that the metric does actually prove it, because you need to analyze why students are failing. Maybe the students have a high failing rate because it's a part-time executive MBA and students are basically, you know, overwhelmed with the work, overwhelmed with family problems, etc. So you really need to analyze what you're trying to resolve, and then you define what you want to do and how you will measure it. So that is all I can say to you at this stage. As I say, I think it's, you know, it really is an excellent initiative. The schools I've mentored and the number of accreditations I've been on, it's always been seen as a very, very positive way forward. And I can only encourage you to seriously think about whether it's something that could interest you. And you'll find that the BGA staff and the mentors are all very keen to help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Philip. I'm sure you all found that extremely helpful. You know, obviously I've tried to deliver you well, we both tried to deliver you the party line, but you know, Philip has lived and breathed you know, BGA mentorship and understands that process, as well as you know, a variety of other mentorships for other organizations as well. But you know, I hope you found those insights useful. I hope that helped to demystify the continuous impact model. That's certainly what we set out to do, as well as to show how it can be something that is not only something that you have to do if you want to pass the BGA accreditation, but something that can be extremely valuable for your institution in terms of measuring your impact, demonstrating your impact, and showing how you've used that to improve your own organization and, you know, hopefully beyond that as well. So we have intentionally left a large portion of time for any questions that you may have with regards to the continuous impact model. So we are open to receive those through the platform. So if anyone does have any questions, please do ask them, and we will endeavour to answer those for you as best as we can. I know that my colleague Victor has been answering away as well as some of them have come in. So so hopefully some of your questions have already been answered of a more logistical nature. So one question is to confirm, would it be interesting to prepare 2 metrics over each category? So yes, so at a very minimum, we are looking at 12 metrics, if you like. So that would be for well, so a very minimum would be 10, because it would be in 5 of the categories, 2 under each. So that would be the very minimum, would be 10 specific metrics. But yes, anywhere between 10, 12 and more, if you have them that are valid and that you want to include, we would encourage you to do so.
Sorry, I did forget as well, I did forget one important point. Really read and review the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and play with them. They're very interesting, fascinating reading. And once again, the good schools actually do establish quite clear links between the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and their own continuous impact model. Sorry, I forgot to sort of stress that point.
That's important, Philip. Thank you. Yes, yeah. You know, as I mentioned, you know, we are actively supporting and referencing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in BGA activities. So yes, so if you can also directly support and reference them as well in your own activities, you know, for BGA accreditation and beyond, that will be extremely helpful to you as well. Another sort of logistical question about the number of metrics. So it's a minimum of 2 under each dimension is what we're talking about. So each of those 6, so 5 of the 6 is a minimum, ideally 6 of the 6, 2 metrics under each of those. So that would be a total of, let's say total of 12. So two metrics under each dimension.
So our colleague from Peru is giving himself too much work. Sorry, there was a question from Peru. I think they're giving themselves too much work.
Well, hopefully it looks like we've done our job, Philip, and we have provided some information that you have found useful, and it has helped understand the continuous impact model better. So that's good. Another question about giving more examples of value creation and intent metrics. I mean, there are other examples in the document on the website, so I would urge you to take a look at that. That is the best resource that you have available for which to do that. Obviously, there are examples there. We have provided examples. A little bit reluctant to provide too many, because what we don't want to do is to provide something that you think is the template and the right metrics to use. There is no such thing as the right metrics to use. There are the right metrics to use for you as an institution and what you want to achieve. So I'm always very hesitant to give too many examples, because I don't want schools to think that this is what BGA wants you to use as your metrics. It has to be what you find valuable, what you would find useful, what is relevant to you, your mission, your vision, your strategy. And then the role of the mentor is to make sure that A, that actually is the case, and B, to make sure they are suitably challenging, that they are the right sort of metrics that that would make sense to you and to BGA. So that's really for the discussion between you and your mentor.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just because it's not that we wish to avoid giving examples, but really each school. But some schools of value creation may be that in that area there is a relative lack of, salary companies, that there's an emphasis on creating sort of entrepreneurial schemes. So the value creation of that school will be to ensure that they're giving to the region the appropriate education, the appropriate support, or maybe the creation of an entrepreneurial incubator. So you've really got, that's why I said to you, it's really, what is your strategy? That's the intent. What are you trying to do? And once you define that, you play around with your ideas and try and see what you can do to, to address those strategic issues.
Okay, well, as we seem to have no more questions coming in, I will bring this session to a close. I'd like to thank you all for joining. We've had a lot of participants here in this session, which is really great. Great to know that you're interested in learning more about BGA and the very distinctive accreditation process that we are developing and that we are bringing to you. I'd like to thank Philip very much as well for your valuable insights. I think it's always very important to have not just the staff member coming in and giving you the sort of the party line, as I said, but someone who's actually working with schools and mentoring them to help them achieve their own objectives as well. And the mentorship is a really key and important part of the BGA experience. So thank you, Philip, again for sharing your views with us. And if at any time you do have any other questions that you wish to ask me, I provided my contact details. All the slides will be made available to you as well. So please do get in touch and let me know if there is anything else I can help you with. So thank you very much.
So there is a request for a workshop rather than a seminar. I don't know if you've seen that question.
Yes, I have. Yes, we will certainly take your feedback on board and look to look to develop something maybe a bit more thorough. It's very difficult on Zoom, I think, or equivalent platforms to do something of that nature. But we could take that on board, and we could try to develop something like that going forward. Okay, in that case, thank you very much for your time. I hope you're all well and staying safe, and we will look forward to engaging with you again soon. Thank you very much.